Hello, Irish fans. Notre Dame finishes the season 11-1 with a 45-14 victory over Stanford inside Stanford Stadium. I'm Greg Ladky, joined by our resident coach, Tim Hyde. Tim, I think the question that's at the front of every Notre Dame fan's mind is, do you think they looked good enough tonight to convince a committee that they should get the nod over a one-loss Big 12 team or even possibly a two-loss Alabama team?
Great question. That's gonna be those guys in the committee flipping that out. But are you judging off of today? Are you judging off of the 12 games? What are you judging off of? Are you judging off of the Alabama before Auburn decides not to, tell the running back to keep the ball in bounds and you run out the clock and win a game 10-3? Or you're going to talk about the Auburn defense that lets them go 90 plus yards at the end of the
Yeah.
game? You're going to talk about Alabama's best win. What's their best win this year? Ole Miss,
Yeah.
a 5-loss Mississippi State,
Hmm.
6-6 Auburn. Uh, you know, did they play good? They scored. They did what they had to do. They came in there. You want to talk about the control stat that the committee uses. Notre Dame had it all game long, 45-14. A little frustrating. They gave up a touchdown. Heck, I mean, they're obviously the one interception away from maybe even having a shutout again in today, which is a little frustrating on that part.
Right.
For the defense. And the second touchdown, we could talk about that later. Just a real bad angle by Xavier Watts that let that guy run all the way in. But did they do what they did? They won 45-14. They're 11-1. The thing that Notre Dame has is they have one loss, right? So let's compare everyone's one loss.
Right.
Who's their one loss going against? It's going to be a team that's going to be in the Final Four. As long as Cincinnati beats Houston, they're in the Final Four.
Hmm.
So no one else in Notre Dame's position has that on their data point. If you want to look at that, Oklahoma State, who they lose to, 7-5 Iowa State.
Yep.
Who did Alabama lose to? A 4-loss A&M.
Hmm.
So, and they're a 2-point play away from losing to Florida, who fires their coach. A red zone touchdown drive against LSU, who can't finish that against a coach who gets fired. So, hey, I'm going on a rant. Don't get me going. But, I mean, there's so much to talk about. The love affair, obviously there's bias in the media to who they want in. It's so cut and dry.
Yeah, and I think the more the committee looks at it, the more just college football's down this year. There's not that many good teams. It doesn't take a great team to get through the Big 12 with one loss this year. It doesn't take a great team to get through the SEC with one loss. I mean, LSU's down, Auburn's down. Everyone other than Georgia in the SEC East is very meh. I mean, there's not a gauntlet. I mean, if anything, the Big 10 champion in my mind, even though there's going to be no one undefeated coming out of that conference, a one-loss Big Ten team probably did the most of anyone of any of the other one-loss teams. I mean, I think Michigan. I know Notre Dame fans don't want to hear it, but Michigan's performance today was awfully impressive.
Well, let's back up. Just coming into today, Notre Dame, the strength of record, which the community loves to talk about, they're ranked fourth in the country coming into today.
Mm-hmm.
Strength of schedule, no one thinks Notre Dame's played anyone in America this year. They're ranked 12th for strength of schedule. Reese Davis, I know I texted you today. Reese Davis kind of dug into the guys on game day this morning when they're hyping up everyone other than Notre Dame. And Reese Davis, little kudos to Reese, said, "Hey, by the way, Notre Dame's got a better strength of record, strength of schedule, all that than Ohio State." And you heard crickets on the stand over there when they were talking this morning. So Notre Dame, obviously, they didn't have the stellar, top 10 game they did with Cincinnati and lost at home, obviously, way, way early in the year. But SC, NC, North Carolina was preseason top 10. SC, everyone thought was going to be a Rose Bowl team. Hey, some of these teams did not live up to standards, no doubt about that. But Notre Dame did what they had to do. They're 11-1, and they're on the cusp. I mean, they're going to be 4 or 5. They're going to be 4 or 5 when it's all said and done. And you want to talk about Georgia? Hey, let's compare Georgia and Notre Dame. They had a common opponent in Georgia Tech. Notre Dame scored 10 more points than Georgia did. So
Yeah.
Just throwing that out there for the Notre Dame fans to put a smile on their face.
Well, before I get to the question, I'm struck by, I was at the Toledo game as a fan with my family. That was 76 days ago. I looked that up earlier. And
Wow.
with a minute 40 left in that game, I'm trying to console my kids and explain to them how it's okay that Notre Dame's going to lose to Toledo. And here they are, 11-1. And to think that they are legitimately not only in the playoff discussion but may legitimately get a playoff spot, I think is something that's just again a tip of the cap to the Notre Dame program, the coaches, and the amount of improvement that they've had. But John Amberg asked a question, and we were touching on this a little bit before. He says, does Brian Kelly not believe in style points, or does he? Very confusing second half, pulling Cone, then putting him back in, only to hand off towards the end of the game. So probably feels there should have been one more touchdown there, right?
Well, they did score at the end of the
Yeah,
game.
they did score at the end.
I mean, yeah. I mean, they did score at the end to get it in the 40s. I'll be honest. I'm with John. I was frustrated as well. They were throwing. They had the offsides on fourth down that gave them the first down. They were handing off, probably thinking they could jam one in there. They're probably going to come back with a play action. The TV camera did pan away to Kelly in that last minute, and he was telling the guys, basically he was a little animated, meaning we need to score on this drive.
Yeah.
So I think they would have done a play action, used their timeouts to put another touchdown on the board. Hey, I'm going to back up to the end of the first half again, not to get into the giant end of the first half discussion, just like Virginia,
Right.
but a little bit of the same scenario.
Right.
I mean, they hold Stanford, and it was, I think, a minute 46. Don't hold me to that. Minute 46, minute 50, right in that time frame, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
All they had to do is call a timeout, and you go in a 2-minute drill. They let Stanford run the clock down, no timeouts.
Right.
Obviously, Stanford gets the ball back to Notre Dame. Notre Dame just eats it. So, and then Stanford had a chance. Obviously, they tried a 59-yard field goal to no avail. But to me, once again, you're going into this game. I know they're up. I know, what was it, 24-0 at half, I believe. I know they're up. He's probably thinking, let's don't throw a pick. It's kind of what he was talking about at the end of the Virginia game, but it's still – this game, the more it went on, Stanford had no athletes to match up with Notre Dame.
Oh, yeah.
This was one of those games. I mean, just keep running crossing routes, keep running dig routes, keep running all these things, and you're going to put up 50-plus points. There's no need to do 12 personnel or none of that. And we'll get into that when we talk run game.
Right. So let's talk. I mean, let's talk about that. I mean, it wasn't a great night. The numbers got, and let me pull up the numbers now. They did improve in the second half. Notre Dame ended up with 4.8 yards per rush, but that number up until close to halftime was in the low twos. So they definitely weren't off to a good start running the ball. Kyron Williams, by my math, he did exceed 1,000 yards. I think he needed 72 coming into the night, ends up with 74. So that touchdown run, he does get over 1,000 yards for the year. But what was your overall evaluation, Coach, of the running game, specifically early? What did you see? What was wrong?
You know what? It's so frustrating. Especially when you break it down as a coach. Once again, offensive line's 5 guys. They're assigned to block 5 guys. The tight ends, everyone else is assigned to the other guys. There's one outside zone where I believe it was Williams. If he cuts it, he hits a huge gain, but the tight end Takis on the backside is getting his butt kicked. Mm-hmm. The guy, the D end playing inside shade 7 technique in the C gap, fights off Takis and makes a stuff for a no gain. There's a handful of those things in the game. There's one where they're about ready to bust an inside run, and Kristofic just stays on his guy too long. All he has to do is scrape off to the Will Backer. Everyone's blocked toe to toe, and they're going to get big yards. Kristofic doesn't get off on the Will. The Will stuffs it for a 1 yard. I think that was a 1 yard loss, and that was just straight. And rewatching it real quick during the timeout was Kristofic. You just come off, boom, big run. There's a handful of those. They ran a lot of counters today, pulling Madden with with Michael Mayer, who obviously has that great pancake into the boundary that they highlighted a ton today. Thank God they picked up that
just tossed him.
Call. How do you get holding when you drive the guy into the ground, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a little frustrating, a little too much. Once again, dancing. I felt Williams had 2 runs right off the top of my head where he bounced outside. You bounce outside, you get the extra fitter, which is the safety in this case. And then there's one right at the end. There's 2 runs, near the end where the DN just is crashing down the line because there's no respect for Jack Cohn. So no one accounts for him.
Mm-hmm.
It's been those things all year long. I thought the offensive line 5 for 5 did some really good things, especially on the Buchner big run right there was a heck of a job, even on Tyrese as well. So
Yeah.
a little frustrating because they did always have an extra guy. It seemed like Stanford just sold out, and that's why you go back to the stats. Jack Cohn throws for nearly 350 yards.
Yep.
And you look at that 74 completion percentage, a couple plays away from probably being, obviously in the 80 plus. So it was a little frustrating with the run game just because Stanford sold its soul to stop that run. And at the end of the day, you get a couple big runs and they still run for almost 170 yards.
Yeah, Michael Mayer and Kevin Austin both over 100 yards receiving on the day. Michael Mayer with 9 catches had an outstanding night. And another a salute to Jack Cohn, especially in the first half. Starts out red hot. I mean, I want to say he completed his first 6 or 7 passes again tonight. I don't recall what it was, but very, very high completion
the interception. Yeah, I'm sorry, Greg. Yeah, and just talk real quick about the intercept. The interception is he's trying to do too much to Mayer. He's got Lindsey wide open for an easy first down. And all they did was bracket Mayer. The guy that's on Mayer jumps outside. The inside backer hops inside of Mayer, and they bracket him. And Lindsey, you could see him in the background, like, "Hey, I'm uncovered, first down." So yeah, that interception was just staring at Michael Mayer, which has been as great as Michael Mayer is. Jack Cohn sure does stare at him a heck of a lot, and he's done it all year. It's hard not to when you probably have the best tight end in America, except for the Mackey Award. Voters don't, I guess, watch film as we like to. I mean, seriously, how do you? I mean, come on. Notre Dame's known as tight end U, and you got a guy who just broke the single season record for catches in a season, and he's not considered one of the 3 best in America.
Yeah, I wonder if Brock Huard was taking a little bit of a shot at that. He didn't say anything about the award tonight, but he said on the broadcast, he's like, Michael Mayer's the best tight end in the country.
Without a doubt.
One stat that caught our eye, and I'm sure it'll catch the coach's eye, wanted your breakdown of this, but Notre Dame was actually 1 of 10 on third downs going to that final drive, and they got one on that final touchdown drive to be 2 of 11 overall. That's not a good number, and that's not going to get it done against good football teams.
No, I'm looking at the stats that Blue and Gold puts out right here. Stanford came into this game giving up 46% a game, and Notre Dame was 2 for 11. Just frustrating. Yeah, third down, which is it's very easy to say. It was not good at all. It was not good. There's too many punts. You just look at the second half. Notre Dame's in complete control of this football game, and they come out in the second half and they go, Cohn throws the interception. Then they get the great touchdown drive, which was led by the Austin pass, and then they go back-to-back punts. So, and then they brought Buchner in, and he leads them straight down to a touchdown. So, and then they got a punt again. Just a little too many punts. It just seemed like there's too many punts in this game. And I know they have 45 points. It's hard to argue and things of that nature. It just felt like they could have obviously done more, but they were in control all game long. No serious injuries out there, and they played a heck of a really clean football game. It's just it's too bad defense gave up 2 touchdowns.
Yeah,
because they had that streak going real quick. Oh, where's the stats? What was it? 14 straight quarters.
Yeah, the fourth quarter of the UNC game.
Exactly. It was that 14 straight quarters they had, and then I want to say 43 straight possessions.
Yeah.
Going back, which is an amazing stat when you look at. That's a lot of possessions without a touchdown in modern football. So pretty awesome. Hats off to those to the defense that's really played its tail off here.
Yeah, and Stanford was just 3-11 in their own right on third down conversions, and you noticed that Notre Dame was doing some tweaking with using Xavier Watts and Isaiah Pryor.
Yeah, they did have their whole third down package was Pryor's played a lot of the outside backer. Pryor was in the box a lot today. So you could call it their 4-2-5. It was more of their dime to me because he was in the box, flexed out as a inverted strong safety. And they had Xavier Watts playing the deep, a lot of times the deep half. So in their dime. So a little bit of wrinkles there. obviously some outstanding pressure once again from the down guys. Had some big push up there. A little quiet game it seemed like from MTA Heinisch, but I think that was just the style of game
Yeah.
that Stanford was playing as well. Foskey, what tonight felt like the Virginia night. It'd be interesting to go back and rewatch it and see, did they just double the heck out of Foskey all night long? And we're like, you're not getting 3 sacks tonight. So
Yeah.
it just felt like that.
Make sure you hit like on this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you subscribe, you can take part in the comments and ask us a question in the comment section. We'll be happy to try to get to it. What do you think about the Bo Bauer play? He gets ejected. Didn't seem like they reviewed that very long either, so I'm not sure if there's much of a debate. But one of those things where a kid's trying to play hard, and it seems he overdid it.
Yeah, but the guy's down.
Yeah.
The play's over.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy's down. Come on. I know he plays. Hey, I've been hyping up Bo Bauer on this show here for the last month. His once again percentage, the way big plays to every snap he takes is off the charts this year. I even marked him down today. Pressure, blitz, tackle for loss. He was all over the place before he got thrown out. The guy's down. It's especially I think it was behind the line of scrimmage. Just let it go.
Mm-hmm.
Let it go. If he's not down, you're going to blast him as he's standing up. And yeah, I mean, he didn't need to do that. It was quick and easy. They were going to throw him out. So that was too bad because Bo Bauer's been a stud the last month.
Right. And yes, Bobby O, I believe you have to sit out. It's 1 half, and if that includes the game that you're currently in, then you're eligible to play right away in the next game. Is what I understand about the rules. So he would be able.
Yeah,
to play.
Bauer's back in the bowl game.
Yep.
Yeah,
sure.
Bauer's back. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about Tyler Buchner. I know Jack Cohn, another great night, and he deserves so much credit. But I saw some questions on our forum, the Loose Emoji forum, about Tyler Buchner and not letting him do a lot. We still haven't seen a ton of him just be like just in the general passing offense. And part of me now wonders if they're just trying to hide that for Ohio State next year. You know what I mean? And just not put a lot of film out there, essentially.
Yeah, a little conspiracy theory there, huh?
Maybe. Who knows?
No, exactly. Even today. I mean, what's the one pass he throws? The little bootleg 1 yard pass to Michael Mayer. I would love to see how many times. I mean, Mayer was a stud, but that guy, how many catches has he had 5 yards or less this year where they're just knocking his ankles down this year? It seems like, Mayer's got about 20 catches where he's getting clacked from the knee down, poor guy.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. Let the guy throw sometimes. I don't know. They run it. They run the flip pass real quick on one of the tackles for loss early in the game with Jack Cohn, where it's the DN who's unblocked. Well, that's the flip toss. Mm-hmm. Buchner's done that a ton. Stanford they did it twice today, and Stanford stuffed it twice for tackle for losses. So the one with Cohn is they read the DN, and then you're supposed to keep it and go. So they did that same thing with Buchner. It seemed like the zone read where he takes off for the big run, or excuse me, his touchdown run. He could do that all game long. It's there all game long. There's been a handful of times this year I felt like he's given it too much. He should keep it, but spread him out, let those guys go, let him throw some passes, a screen, something. It really does seem like they just must not think he could read enough. It's going back to one of the plays last week in the game where, he's got the crosser and he's throwing the pass deep and it eats it up. And, Kelly's talking to him like, you hit the crosser to first down. So maybe it's just those subtle things and they just want to maybe get out of there. Who knows? A little clean, but that's 2 games in a row where he's only been in only a handful of plays. I think he was 17-18 last week against Georgia Tech, and maybe definitely less today because they just went with Cohn a ton.
Yeah, he just had that one pass attempt. Couple viewers asking about a scenario that I wanted to bring up. If Cincinnati were to lose to Houston in their conference title game, does that eliminate them, or do they have the better argument saying, well, we did play Notre Dame and we certainly shouldn't move behind them? What do you think?
Great question. Do you lose late in the season and move from 4-4? I mean, has Polster's ever done that? Has it ever happened? Are they going to get benefit of the doubt? Do you really think the committee wants a non-power 5 in there? No.
Probably not.
So if they lose in their conference championship game, Cincinnati obviously has had a lot of close games. They haven't played good. What was the game? What was that? Tulane, where they had the ball 4 times on the 1 and can't score?
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically a loss for Cincy. But if Cincy loses, it's wide open for Notre Dame. I mean, they'll put Notre Dame in the 4 spot. I think they would do that. Put them at the 4, and if Oklahoma State goes, they bump them maybe to the 3 since they're a conference champion. The biggie is the Oklahoma State argument. Yeah, the Oklahoma State. I mean, they're going to play Baylor. I don't know. I've only watched Baylor a little bit this year. Nothing fancy. I thought I heard they're starting quarterbacks out, so I don't even know if he's even going to be playing. They beat him earlier. But let's just look at this Oklahoma State schedule here.
Yeah, that's what I've pulled up here. Yep.
Yeah, because that's the argument. So everyone's hyping up because, once again, people don't want Notre Dame in there. It's easy as that.
Yeah.
So they don't want Notre Dame in there. So they're hyping up, well, it's a conference champ. They're beating a top 10 team. Yeah, they're beating a top 10 team because it's going back to your point. The Big 12 is horrible.
Yeah.
So the couple teams that are highly ranked, because no one's good in that conference.
Right.
So everyone's got 8 wins automatically. It seems like, the top 3 teams this year, because it's so bad with Texas and all these teams is bad. Iowa State was the preseason favorite, and they're 7-5. Well, let's just look at Oklahoma State. You want to, you want to compare schedules once again. They beat 1AA. I still call it 1AA. That's the old school in Missouri State by a touchdown. Tulsa by 5. Boise State, who's not Boise State this year, by 1. And then look at their 1 loss. You want to, once again, compare losses. Notre Dame's going to lose to a team. Let's just assume Cincinnati beats Houston, which is going to be a great game. Houston's really, really good this year. And but let's just say Cincinnati wins. So their loss is going to be a top 4 Final Four team. And Oklahoma's loss is going to be to a team with 5 losses. How are they even, plus their 13th data point, which everyone wants to talk about the 13th game. Well, their data point's a 1AA. They barely beat in game 1.
And let me clarify, this number, this is a Yahoo Sports schedule page. This 10th ranking is for the FCS. This is, I just don't want people to be confused to think that, Missouri State somehow is ranked 10th in the real rankings. That's not the case.
Yeah, exactly. And then you got Texas Tech, who they shut out last week. Well, they fired their coach.
Yeah.
Their coach didn't even coach the game.
And same with TCU as far as this big 63-17 win. They're
exactly. So they get back-to-back. Yeah, that's a great point, Greg. They get back-to-back games with coaches who are fired. That tells you that tells you all you need to know about the Big 12 this year. So people want to hype them up. They want to do all that stuff because they just want to create a little chaos and whatever. But if you go schedule by schedule, okay, who's the worst team Notre Dame played, or the lowest team, let's say, that Notre Dame played is Toledo. Well, look at Toledo. They're in the top, quarter of the country in nearly every defensive category.
Right.
Really good football team. Some of these guys want to play Toledo. Everyone always talks about Navy. Does Alabama, does Ohio State, do some of these teams, do they want to play a triple option offense where you're getting your knees chopped? No. That's why Alabama and the SEC is, when was the last time an SEC team, a high top 10 teams, played Army, Navy, Air Force? So.
No, I always say that usually when a big Power 5 program plays either Army or Navy, it often results in one less fan base making fun of Notre Dame for playing Army and Navy, or more often Navy, because they come to realize that it's not an easy task. These are the rankings coming into the weekend, just so people have a refresher. So we know now that Ohio State's going to have 2 losses. We would expect them to fall below Notre Dame. And this is the one that the reason why people were rooting for Oklahoma tonight was just because of there's an indication going into the weekend that the committee doesn't think as highly of the Sooners as they do of the Cowboys at this time. And so that would be a little bit more beneficial for Notre Dame, for Oklahoma to kind of rid Oklahoma State, being that they're right on the heels of Notre Dame. So, but that did not happen. Oklahoma State did win 37-33.
Let's ask Notre Dame Nation out there. Let's ask all the fans out there watching, going to watch it tomorrow, comment, all that thing, listen on the podcast and whatnot. What? Yeah, exactly. What is the love affair for Oklahoma State? I mean, what have they done that has just knocked the socks off America to say they're a top four team? What have they done?
Yeah.
Here's a comment right here. They talk about Oklahoma's defense. Well, Oklahoma State's defense being what, top 2 or 3 in America. Oklahoma with a freshman quarterback was shredding them today.
Yeah.
I mean, they're a PI. They're down there. There's definitely a pass interference second to last play of the game that's not called. Oklahoma should have the ball on the 1 yard line, win the football game. The ref doesn't call it. So I don't get this love affair with Oklahoma State. Look at the schedule, compare the schedule, and look at the points against, obviously, major teams. And then look at the Big 12. Who in that conference has been a juggernaut this year?
Right. I mean, I just don't think they play a physical brand of football throughout that conference. We talked off before we got on the air that, yeah, this isn't a typical Oklahoma team. Sometimes they are able to bang with the big boys in terms of physicality, but this isn't one of those years. And
No.
yeah, the 13th data point's Missouri State. So it's tough. Like I think
Exactly.
the bigger issue is that they get the conference title game and it's more front of mind with the committee because they had just played. Whereas, we I guess you got to trust that the committee seriously does watch every game in depth. But at some point, does it hurt Notre Dame that they were playing a team this evening that they blew out early in the ball game? The committee was probably watching version 1 of Oklahoma and Oklahoma State,
Sure.
and they're going to watch again the Big 12 title game, and then they're going to come to a decision just hours after that as to who's in the playoff. Those sort of things to me I wonder about in terms of just having a human committee and how much that ultimately hurts Notre Dame since they're essentially idle next weekend. They are idle next weekend.
Exactly. They are idle, but they're going to get stacks of paper and they're going to sit in that room and they're going to communicate in that room. They're going to do all that stuff. Bottom line is go Hawkeyes, right? It's like beat Michigan. Who would have thought Iowa was in there? So,
Right.
hey, Purdue won. They went 8-4. Hopefully, Mississippi State's out of this poll. I mean, they've been sitting in this poll forever, probably to boost Alabama. It seems like. Well, they lost the Egg Bowl, so let's get them out. Purdue at 8-4. It's like, how many top 5 wins do they need to have to be ranked?
Yeah.
So hopefully this committee's like, oh, we forgot about Purdue. They have 8 wins, 2 top 5 wins. Can we rank these guys now? So Notre Dame should have 2 Big Ten teams ranked and going in there. So it does hurt. They're sitting. Brian Kelly talked about it where, hey, we had our shot, we lost. Now we sit back and see what happens. But when you get going on this 13th data point and all these things these people talk about, it drives me nuts. Do we need to join a conference? Why? They went to the Final Four 2 years ago. Notre Dame's never joined a conference, so I'm not one of these.
It's
Maybe
not.
I'm too old school.
It's not happening.
I'm not a big join a conference guy. I mean,
Yeah.
why? Notre Dame has survived this long on its own. Get in there, and especially if they're going to go to 12 teams.
Yeah.
Notre Dame's going to be getting in at 10-2.
The only way I could see it even being considered is if they went to an 8-team playoff and there were automatic qualifiers for either a Power 5 conference or just conference champions in general that would severely restrict the access for Notre Dame. So in other words, like Notre Dame's not getting into the playoff with a good 11-1 team because there was an automatic qualifier for a 10-3 Utah team that's ranked
Exactly.
15th,
Ranked 15th.
and
Yes,
they're getting
exactly.
in. That's when you start to be like, oh boy, maybe we need to join. But if they're going to go 12, and the way they have it set up, or the idea that's been floated out there that Notre Dame just wouldn't be privy to, that first round bye,
Top
that
4.
seems to be
Yeah.
reasonable. And like you said, Tim, I mean they've been in the playoff twice in the last 4 years. So
Yeah, and I
it's
know they're the ACC last year, and I know people, they were in a conference last year,
mm,
but they lost their title game and still got in. So,
yeah,
they still got in with one loss and whatnot. So, you know what? The committee's done a few things. It always seems like, I mean, come on, Bama, Ohio State, how many times have they played favorites and have gotten them in?
right.
So that's why that last minute of the Auburn game, It was so frustrating to watch. But hey, that's for another. That's for the Bama guys to talk about. But
Uh, yeah, and I think that we can in the off season talk a lot about what it would mean to join a conference and if you went to the ACC, like, do you want to play road games in stadiums that are 2/3 filled all the time? Because just most of those
yeah.
programs, football isn't all that big of a deal.
Well, and you know what? And people always talk about joining a conference, but who in America plays as many conferences as Notre Dame does?
Yeah,
I mean, just look at their schedule. Look at all the conferences that they do play. They have a ton of SEC games coming up. They, obviously they got their Pac-10, they got their ACC. They're sprinkling in, like I said, the SEC down the road and whatnot. So, they do sprinkle out, they do branch out. If you're going to go to a conference, then hey, if I'm Notre Dame, then I'm going to play, the Southwest Missouri State.
yeah,
It's like, why
yeah.
not? Everyone else does it,
The
and there's
glorified
zero. I
bye.
mean, exactly. I mean, look at the SEC. Look at the SEC. Everybody plays a 1AA. And by the way, no one's playing the North Dakota states, right?
Right.
No, the South Dakotas, no one's playing those top 10 teams, and saying, "Oh, let's bring those in." No,
Yeah,
they like to play those 6-6, FCS teams is what they do. And that's what they do.
yeah,
And they're glorified buys. They hype the stats. Me is obviously I'm biased. I'm a Notre Dame fan. I'm a longtime Notre Dame follower, football coach, all those things. It's I don't think those stats should count. I don't think those wins should count. I don't think none of that stuff should count when you're a committee talking about this. It
yeah,
should be it. In all honesty, Lee Corso talked about this today. It should be about wins against Power Five teams,
hmm
is what it should be. And
yeah,
I think he mentioned today where Notre Dame is top 3 in the country with Power Five wins.
yeah.
So that's going to go back to the Oklahoma State Notre Dame argument if it ends the way we think it will.
So to revisit something I kind of referenced earlier, if I were to ask you in the middle of September what you thought Notre Dame's record would be at the end of the year, what would you have said?
Oh, geez. Well, hey, originally, my original record, I always thought this was a 10-2 team. I
Yeah,
thought it was one of those transitions. I always, I look back. It was funny. I was actually looking back at my notes. I thought they would lose at home. I thought their one home loss would be Sam Howell and UNC
hmm
because I just have so much respect for him as a quarterback. I thought going to Va Tech for this, for another, for their second time, would that be that type of dynamic coming off of, Wisconsin? Those were like two little losses I had pegged. I was, you're going back to let's go back to August. One of my first comments was the secondary. Who the heck's playing the secondary?
hmm
It's just, I mean, there's no superstars back. Obviously Kyle Hamilton, but let's mention that for 30 seconds. Hamilton got hurt in the second game against SC. This is the sixth straight game that this group has played without Kyle Hamilton.
yeah,
That's unbelievable.
yeah,
Is that being brought up in the committee that a future top 5 NFL draft pick who's a finalist for the National Defensive Player of the Year award, only plays half a season?
yeah,
That's how good he is. Hasn't even played for Notre Dame, and they're 11-1 without one of the premier players in America. So
yeah.
when
And
you look back,
we
the
presume he'd
offensive
be.
line. I'm sorry,
I
what?
said we presume he'd be back for the playoff as well. So I wonder if they consider how good
Yeah,
Notre Dame would be as a playoff team with Kyle Hamilton back there.
true. But you're going back, let's just say going back to, I had DBs, obviously the O line was a mess, and then wide receiver.
Mm,
Which one of these wide receivers had ever played a meaningful snap for Notre Dame this year? None outside
right.
of A.V. Davis. And there's another thing. They have 2 captains that didn't even finish the season this season. So, yeah, and you look back, tip of the cap to, Kelly and this whole group for going 11-1 because there was that stretch where what were they going to do?
Yeah.
How were they going to finish? The Purdue, the Wisconsin games were battles into the fourth quarter. They got through those. Obviously the comeback against Va Tech. So, and then the bye, and then they finally said, "Hey, we're going to go quick pass. We're going to do it. Let's go from there." So, and real quick, talking about real quick pass. I know we talked about O-line earlier. There was an RPO that Jack Cohn misread. He's got Michael Mayer wide open for a
Yeah.
first down. He hands it off, and the guy he's reading makes the tackle. He's unblocked the read guy. So that's going to go back to people harping about the O line. I'm not saying they were, Joe Moore award winning dominant or whatever, but that's an example of one of those fine little coaching things that's out there where the O line may get blamed when in actuality, when you're watching it, it was a bad read from Cone out there on the RPO.
Um, so I want to bring up just a couple people asked about whether we think Iowa
Sure.
could beat Michigan. I have not watched Iowa since earlier in the year. And I watched the whole
Yeah.
Michigan game today, and then because obviously next week we're gonna be watching those two games. We're gonna be watching Iowa versus Michigan, and we're gonna be watching Oklahoma State and Baylor. But Tim, have you had a chance to watch Iowa, and do you think they have a chance? And I'm actually gonna pull up their schedule that they've had this year as well.
I'll say flat out no. 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 I mean, Michigan's a good football team, and I
Yeah,
think with all they are, I know, Notre Dame people out there, we don't like to say it. Michigan is a very physical football team. Harbaugh, went back to power run, smash ball. I think they're top 5 in America in rushing offense.
yeah,
I think that today, I hate to say it, but I think today the Michigan O line won the Joe Moore Award today. I know one of the voters on the committee, and I think they won the Joe Moore
yeah,
Award today. So the way they just manhandled Ohio State. So, do you think Michigan is going to be celebrating too much? Not when they know they could beat Iowa and go to the Final Four. I
yeah,
think they know. I think they're going to be hyped up and go in there and go take it to Iowa. Is what they're going to do. They have better athletes. They have better
yeah.
athletes than Iowa.
Yeah, I feel like Iowa's offense is not that great, especially if you take away their tight ends. And then they were making a lot of plays on defense early in the year, and they're good defense. But if they don't create turnovers and make kind of game-changing plays on the defensive side, they don't have a lot of firepower otherwise. So yeah, I don't like
No,
Iowa's
that was a
chances in
bad.
that one.
And also, just going back to Notre Dame's schedule, it's funny. You start thinking about Notre Dame's schedule, trying to get to the Final Four, and it comes down to horrible defense by a 6-6 Auburn team. Let's just let Bryce Young go at 97 yards in
Yeah,
a minute, and then all your hopes are on Graham Mertz to get another win for Wisconsin. It's put that on there, and then you're asking tonight Oklahoma to win. Hopefully, Oklahoma could play defense when we know they rarely do, which showed again tonight.
yeah.
Oklahoma didn't play D, and they lose. So those were some of the things Notre Dame had. They got hurt on a few of those little nooks and crannies on their scheduling tonight with that thing.
Well, I do you think there's anything else we need to touch upon about the game tonight for against Stanford was like it was kind of like a foregone conclusion. I mean, what do you think about? I made the reference on our board, like it almost seemed like it felt like we were watching a practice. At times, there was those quirky offensive
Yeah.
play calls early in the game that I just don't think Notre Dame would have done in a game that they thought there was any doubt about. And
Yeah, like the reverse to Lindsey.
yeah,
I mean, if Lindsey doesn't, first off, everyone at Notre Dame all of a sudden thinks they could cut all the time. If Lindsey just, they go back and they replayed. If Lindsey he's fast, obviously, just runs straight, he may score. I think he
mhm,
runs by the defender and he tries to cut and slips. I think it's only a 12, 13-yard gain on the reverse. Beautiful setup on that reverse. And great question that you said, felt like a practice, and it did.
yeah,
It just felt a little boring. They were the better football team, better energy, better perimeter guys. That just goes back to, Notre Dame was playing. So, I mean, Notre Dame, I think they were in 13 personnel, maybe 10, 11 times tonight,
yeah,
if I charted it right. So I'll have to go back and see that. Evans had a nice first down catch out there. But yeah, it seemed a little blah. I think even the 2 touchdowns the defense gave up, and one got called back,
hmm
right before half on the little wildcat play right there that Stanford ran. I thought Stanford played hard. I don't think Stanford has any perimeter players.
no,
I thought they played their tails off. There's the one chart that Fox put up talking about recruiting classes, how just there's not a lot of good
oh,
athletes.
I
I
have
think
that
we kind of
stuff.
saw that. Exactly. I think we kind of saw the athletics, the O line. They do have some really good football players. They just, they they're not a good football. They have not been a good football team the last couple of years.
Yeah, let me just to your point. In 2018, Stanford had the 57th ranked recruiting class in the country. 2019, 24th, 2020, 23rd, and 2021, 47th. That was after 4 straight years with a class that finished between either 14th and 19th. So there's a clear
Yeah.
drop off there, and they had the fifth
And when
ranked
you're at
class in
Stanford, real
2020.
quick, exactly, and you've been doing rivals recruiting forever, Greg.
Yeah,
You know Stanford. If you're Stanford and your recruiting classes are 14 to 19, that's Alabama top three.
yeah,
You know what I mean? When you're considering the type of players they have to get,
right,
because people don't realize when you're recruited at Stanford, you're not allowed to commit until you get your acceptance letter.
right.
And most acceptance letters come really late in the process. That's why Notre Dame has had some guys flip last second to Stanford over the years, because they give those letters right around the Christmas time, New Year's time,
Hmm.
and Stanford's been able to get guys. But Stanford's been recruiting because of what Harbaugh built and is transpired into what Shaw. I mean, Shaw's been to three Rose Bowls. He's won
Yeah,
two of them.
yeah.
So he's a heck of a football coach. They just have not had that mix and match of type of dynamic recruiters. Because they have had a lot of coaching transition as well over the years.
Yeah, I was about to bring up David Shaw's. He is 93 and 44 in his 11th year at Stanford. That's a
Yeah.
pretty remarkable record. He's now 500
Oh,
against Notre Dame, by the way, 5-5, with the loss this
hey,
evening.
another great point. Back-to-back wins for Notre Dame and Palo Alto, which has been
Yes.
brutal over the years. Obviously,
Yeah.
they've lost to top 10 teams, some stud Stanford teams, but it's just nice to go out there and win these two games. And then I'm looking at the comment right here that you posted from Jeff a few weeks ago. Hey, I agree. Our one loss is better than your one loss when you
Yeah.
really start breaking down to it. Even the Alabama, like I said, Alabama's loss is to a 4-loss A&M who lost to LSU tonight.
Right. Right.
So, you start pegging these one losses, and you could say, well, we beat, a top 10 Baylor. Okay. Big deal, because there's so many other teams that have lost.
Hmm.
So they just pull them up, because it's going back to the Big 12, which we talked about, laughingly, like some of these guys automatically have 7, 8 wins just showing up is how bad the Big 12's been. So I think at the end of the day, I think the committee is going to look hard at that. I really hope Georgia just takes it to Alabama and just gets them out of there.
Hmm.
I think Michigan's gonna handle business. I think Michigan's going to be number 2 when it's all said and done. I bet you Michigan goes from 5-2 here on Tuesday night. I don't see how they don't jump all the way to where Ohio State was. They just beat them by 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
I think Bama will stay 3, Cincy 4, and then you got 5-6. Notre Dame, Oklahoma State, right there.
Hmm. We have talked in the past about, and this is a point I've harped on over the years, is for Notre Dame to reach the summit of college football and win a national championship. There's a lot of things that have to fall in place and that they have to do. But one of the things is they have to be the program for the elite football players who are academically highly inclined and want to get a great education. They cannot let Stanford be a pimple on their you know what on the recruiting
Yeah.
trail. And it's nights like these where Notre Dame destroys Stanford that are very important. And I think it all started in 2018, the second half of that football game, when they rolled a good Stanford team at home. And then they've been able to be successful against Stanford ever since then. And that's just one thing. There's other things that have to happen, but you got to make sure you're not losing 3 or 4 really top kids a year to Stanford that you probably could have gotten at Notre Dame. There's always going to be a kid or two that wants to stay out west or is from California or just dreamed of going to Stanford, but you just got to make sure that Notre Dame is the place for that type of kid.
And that's 3 straight wins now.
Yep.
That's going back to 18. We talked about this before, where that was a top 10 matchup in Notre Dame. Boom, blew them out of the water. They did the same thing. That was 18 in South Bend, 19, and then obviously tonight 21. They didn't play last year, so that's 3 in a. That's great point. That's 3 in a row. That's why it's so important. People are like, oh, I'd rather go to the Fiesta Bowl. You want to get in the Final Four.
No, yeah.
You want to get in the Final Four. You want to put that on your resume, because you can't win a national championship unless you're in the Final Four. You
Right.
just want to be in the show. You just want to have an opportunity. Is Georgia great this year? Was Clemson great in 18? Was Bama great last year? Yes, but you want an opportunity, and you keep pounding that on the
Yeah.
recruiting trail. Like, guys, we're there. We're knocking on the door. We need you to come in here and get us over the hump. And that's in that type of recruiting pitch where we're battling for Final Four berths. We're not just
Yeah.
hanging out here, trying to get to the Fiesta Bowl. So
And this is the year, even though I don't think Notre Dame is as good as they were last year, probably not as good as they were in 2018 either, I just don't think there's anyone else that's as good as they've been in previous years. Georgia, to me, is maybe the one dominant team, although they're not. I mean, they did get Pickens back today, right, at wide receiver. He started
yeah.
playing some,
Oh,
but
did they? Yeah, I heard
yeah,
he was coming back.
but they're not otherwise crazy explosive. Like if you're good on
Yeah.
defense, you shouldn't be allowing Georgia to put a 40 or 50 spot up on you. So get a couple plays and maybe you got a shot. Alabama's got vulnerabilities. Michigan looked great today, but they lost to Michigan State. I mean, it's not like they're
Mhm.
unbelievable world beaters. I mean, to me, this is the year where. Listen, I'm not saying Notre Dame, again, is as good as they've been in the past or is as good as some of those elite teams have been in the playoffs, but I just don't know if anyone else is all that elite. If you get in the playoffs, I think you got a shot.
Well, and Notre Dame's gone toe to toe with Kirby Smart in Georgia in 17 and
Yeah,
19. So they've gone four quarter down to the last possession plays with Georgia. So let's just say Notre Dame is playing the 1-4 game with Georgia. Notre Dame's not going to go in there scared. I mean,
right.
they've played,
No.
they played 2017. Georgia had Smith, the Buckus Award winner, that great front, great defense, went down to the end. I mean, they've played against these SEC guys.
Right.
So they're not going to be intimidated or scared and whatnot. You got to have the opportunity. And because, hey, just real quick, if they don't get in and Cincinnati's in, Notre Dame's going to the Fiesta Bowl to play a Big Ten team. Is who's going to the Rose Bowl? Because let's say Michigan's the Final Four. Are they really going to put Iowa in the Rose Bowl over Ohio State? Or is it
Yeah.
Ohio State goes in because they're the higher ranked team, meaning Notre Dame plays Iowa in the Fiesta Bowl? I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. I have no idea.
We have a super chat from David Knight. Appreciates how we look.
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, I need to go get more shirts and ties. Tell you the truth, that's what my
There
wife
you go.
says. Like I said, I admitted last week that my wife dresses me. I'm a red green colorblind, like many men are, and sometimes
Hey,
if it's left to my own
real quick.
dressing.
Exactly. Real quick. The David, hey, right at the end, as soon as Notre Dame put up the 45 spot, I was like, hey, sweetie, you got to get me a shirt. There's a guy that commented last week, so I can't wear the same thing. So literally busted out a brand new shirt and tie for tonight.
Well, excellent, David. Appreciate you very much. Tim,
Yes.
can we get to one more? We just had a question pop up
Sure.
off our premium board. And I don't know the answer to this, but it's worth speculating. Charlie T asks if the Irish get a playoff spot, does Blake Fisher play? So I'm going to parlay that into, let's say he would be able to. Would you disrupt in that situation what you have built on the offensive line?
Great question. Great question. So they would obviously iron those kinks out during the bowl prep practices, and that's assuming maybe is Fisher going to be back next week during maybe some practices.
Yeah,
Next week they'll probably just do lift and studies is what they're going to do next week, as they're just hanging out, waiting to see what happens. But do you disrupt that? Do you put him at Lug? I mean, Lug just got speed rush like crazy for the one sack tonight. So
yeah,
no, it's a great question. I mean,
yeah.
Olds played awesome. Christophic. I mean, great question. But at the end of the day, if Fisher can play and you could get that guy, 10 snaps, why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
Now, just for the record, we should say there's been no reference or insinuation by Brian Kelly in a presser that
Mhm.
Blake Fisher was potentially coming back this year. Whereas on the
He
contrary,
was
Kyle
mentioned.
Hamilton in that 6 week window for his
Mhm.
knee injury was I think saying that yes, if there was a postseason opportunity, Kyle Hamilton very potentially could be available. So go ahead, Tim.
Fisher was mentioned, though. Kelly did mention one time about Fisher how they expect to have him during later in the year bowl prep possible.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I,
I
I
haven't heard
remember
anything
that at press
recent.
conference.
Yeah, it might have been
No,
really, really.
no, this was a couple weeks. It was a
Okay.
couple weeks ago where they were talking about that as a possibility
Hmm.
because obviously he's already redshirted, so they could easily
Right.
play him. It doesn't affect anything. So, but yeah, does it affect that group? I don't know. I think Blake Fisher's an absolute monster, an absolute stud. No one on that offensive line looks like him. He
Right.
is, I mean, seriously, when he was out there against Florida State, you're like, I called him Orlando Pace way back in January when me and Mike Singer did our first video together. He looks like Orlando Pace out there. Those are Blake Fisher's are rare commodities. He's a stud. I would definitely get him out there if you can.
Well, that should do it. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. It is almost 12:30 on the East Coast where Tim and I live. Everyone that was out the game, I hope you are at the game out in Stanford. I hope you travel safe, get back home, and maybe catch the tape version of this if you'd like. Irish 11-1, Tim. I mean, it's still
Wow.
unbelievable when you think of where they were following the Florida State performance and very nearly losing to Toledo. That they are in this situation. A big hats off to the Notre Dame coaching staff, all their players. I mean, they got so much better during the course of the year. Jack Cohn, again, I think deserves a lot of credit for his stabilizing presence, and he improved as well during the course of the year.
Yeah. Hey, at the coaching staff, you're right. I mean, they were right there. You had a field goal to win, a pass to Mare against Toledo to win, a field goal to beat Va Tech. Obviously, the fourth quarters against Purdue and Wisconsin that got him over the hump. A little bit of malaise against Cincinnati. What really happened in there? Cincinnati just they played their tails off is what they did in that game.
Yeah.
Ritter goes 80 yards before halftime, gets them over the hump. In that game. But hey, I mentioned a couple of weeks ago. I think it was after our SC win. I was at the SC game in 2016 when they finished 4-8. I was
Mm-hmm.
in there, soggy rain. It was an ugly game. And Brian Kelly looked back. I mean, Brian Kelly, some thought he was going to get fired in right after the game by, Dr. Swarbuck at the end of that game going 48. And he changed a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
He changed the way he did things. A lot of the players from that group are starting to come out and talk about how he really did meet with them. He did that. He listened to them. And you go back to McGlinchey, Nelson, and all these players, and they all talked about you got to change the strength program, and that's what they've done.
Yeah.
They went out there and they got Bayless, and they've just changed so much about how they do things. And it's 5 straight years, double-digit wins,
Yeah.
and it really is amazing. And you really go back to USC just real quick. I don't know if people realize this. 2 years ago when Clay Helton was starting to get a lot of the pressure, Clay Helton called up Brian Kelly.
Yeah.
He called Brian Kelly and asked him, hey, a couple things to do. And Clay Helton didn't go all in. He hired a few new assistants, a new strength coach, but from what I heard, because I got a lot of friends associated with USC out there, is he didn't go all in like Brian Kelly just fired a ton of people and we're like, boom, we're changing a billion things. Helton didn't, and Helton's gone. So there are a few of those things out there that Brian Kelly's done, and a few coaches don't have, you want to say the guts and the wherewithal and the experience to do that at Notre Dame. And 11-1 is amazing when you look at
Yeah.
all the dudes that they lost. They really did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing how it's exciting to think about how good they could be next year as well, because it's a young roster. It's not exactly.
If they let Buchner throw more than 5 yards down the field, right?
Yeah, they've got to be hiding stuff for
That's
Ohio
off
State. It's
season.
weird to me.
That's off season. That's
Yeah.
off season conversation pieces.
Well, Tim, I appreciate everyone. If you have not yet hit like on this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We will do some stuff leading up to the bowl game. Presuming obviously Notre Dame will be playing next sometime around the turn of the year, and also we have National Signing Day. Or National Sign that first period, that 3-day period. And I think the first day of it's December 15th, if I'm not correct. It's a little
It's Wednesday.
earlier than normal this
Yeah.
year. So stay tuned for that. We'll have a bunch of video content. So anyways, everyone, thank you for tuning in. Tim, thank you for your time. And we'll see everyone later.
You got it.